Have you ever wondered what God truly expects from your spirit? Perhaps at some point in your life, you've questioned the reason for your existence, the cause of certain inner voids, or even that restlessness that seems impossible to calm with anything in this world. Sometimes we seek answers in reason, other times in emotions, but there is something that goes beyond what we feel or think, something profound, eternal, and invisible, our spirit. And it is precisely in this secret and sacred place that God desires to dwell and reveal himself. Because more than rituals, behaviors, or appearances, what the Lord seeks is a living spirit, awake, sensitive to his presence, and aligned with heaven. Perhaps you've never noticed, but there is a difference between living religiously and living spiritually. While religion can teach us doctrines and practices, it is the spirit connected with God that transforms our essence. And this is where we often go wrong. We think we please God merely with external actions, but we forget that he searches the deepest parts of our being. As it is written in John 4:24, God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. This verse reveals a powerful key. God does not seek appearances. He seeks essence. He wants a spirit that worships him with sincerity, with total surrender, with inner truth. But what does this mean in practice? It means that our spirit, that divine spark breathed into us by God, needs to be in constant harmony with the Creator. It means that it's not enough to have a healthy body or a soul full of intense emotions if our spirit is asleep, extinguished, or contaminated. The spirit is like an invisible flame that must be fed daily with the word, with prayer, with surrender. And when that flame goes out, we lose spiritual discernment, become vulnerable to deception, and drift away from the true source of life. From the beginning, God made man with 3 dimensions: body, soul, and spirit. The body is our connection to the physical world. The soul is where our emotions, desires, and thoughts reside. But the spirit is the deepest point. It's where the divine touch occurs, the place where we can hear God's voice and be guided by him. When Adam sinned, the human spirit became separated from God, losing its sensitivity, its purity. But through Christ, that connection was restored. As it is written in Romans 8:16, the Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. This is more than a theological statement. It's a living truth. God speaks to our spirit. He confirms our identity. He directs our steps through this invisible but powerful connection. However, many live with their spirits stifled, suffocated by the voices of the world, the distractions of the flesh, or the traumas of the soul. And that's why Jesus didn't come just to save, but also to awaken. He touched people from the inside out. When he healed, he restored the body, but he also freed the soul and rekindled the spirit. In John 11, when he calls Lazarus out of the tomb, it's not just a physical miracle, it's a prophecy about spiritual awakening. Jesus still calls many Lazaruses out of spiritual death. He says, "Come out," and that voice echoes even today, seeking hearts ready to live a life full of the Spirit of God. But perhaps you're wondering, how do I know if my spirit is alive to God? The answer lies in the fruits. A living spirit shows sensitivity to God's presence, hunger for the word, a desire for holiness, compassion for others, and spiritual discernment. When the spirit is healthy, we can perceive divine direction even amid chaos. We can resist temptations that once overcame us, forgive when it once seemed impossible, and love with a love that is not human, but heavenly. This doesn't come from the soul. It comes from a spirit transformed by grace. What the Bible reveals about this can change the way you see everything. Because when you understand the value of your spirit, you'll realize that there are battles not fought in the body or the mind, but in the spiritual realm. As it says in Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers." In other words, it's in the spirit that we triumph or are defeated. And that's why awakening is so urgent. We cannot live anesthetized, unaware of the subtleties of deception or the invisible attacks trying to pull us away from God. We need to be attentive, vigilant, with our spirit on alert. And what if what you've learned so far isn't everything? What if there's a deeper dimension you haven't fully accessed yet? The Holy Spirit doesn't just want to visit you, He wants to dwell in you. He wants to transform your mind, heal your soul, but above all, rekindle your spirit. When that happens, everything changes. What was once heavy becomes light. What was once confusion becomes clarity. What was once fear turns into faith. Because when the spirit is aligned with God, everything else falls into place. When the human spirit is awakened to divine reality, a new dimension of life is revealed. What was once invisible becomes tangible. What once seemed distant now feels intimate. And it's at this point that we understand what God truly expects from our spirit, not just that it exists, but that it is alive, surrendered, and governed by the Holy Spirit. Because a spirit that breathes God's presence becomes a beacon in the midst of darkness, a bridge between heaven and earth, an instrument of revelation and transformation. Have you ever noticed how some people have a serenity that doesn't come from human techniques but from an inner source? How they maintain faith even in the face of the worst news, or speak with wisdom even when the world around them is collapsing? That's not a natural gift. It's the sign of a spirit cultivated in intimacy with the Lord. It's the fruit of a relationship built in secret, where the Spirit of God ministers eternal truths and strengthens the heart. As it says in Proverbs 20:27, the spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all the innermost parts of his being. In other words, God illuminates our soul through our spirit. And when that light shines, darkness loses its power. But that light doesn't ignite on its own. It needs to be sought, desired, and fed. And this is where many stumble. They chase external solutions but neglect the internal source. They invest in the body, develop the mind, but forget to nurture the spirit. The result is a generation full of information, but empty of revelation, full of emotions but lacking discernment, full of movement but with a dormant spirit. That's why God is calling, now more than ever, those who want more than the appearance of faith. He is summoning true worshippers, those who desire to live in the fullness of the Spirit. And how do you reach this place of fullness? The answer lies in surrender. You must let go of control, abandon the false security of the flesh, empty yourself of pride, and say, Lord, I don't just want to live for you, I want to live in you. That changes everything. Because a surrendered spirit doesn't resist God's work, doesn't rationalize faith, doesn't negotiate truth. It bows, it prostrates itself, it cries out, Revive me, Lord, according to your word. Psalm 119:25. And God responds, He manifests. He breathes life where there was death, hope where there was weariness, direction where there was confusion. Perhaps you're hearing this message and feeling something being stirred within you. That's the Holy Spirit speaking to your spirit. It's heaven's call to a new level of intimacy. Don't ignore that touch. Don't harden your heart, because the sooner you respond, the sooner you'll see the fruits of this awakening. And these aren't fleeting fruits. They're eternal. Fruits that endure, that influence generations, that glorify God. As Jesus said in John 15:5, He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. Spiritual abiding is the key to fruitfulness. And this awakening process isn't always comfortable. Often God allows external discomforts to reveal internal slumber. He shakes structures, permits crises, silences voices, all to lead us to the silence where only His voice remains. It's in the desert that we learn to hear what we couldn't in the crowd. It's in scarcity that we discover the sufficiency of grace. It's in brokenness that the Spirit finds its true place. And there, in the deepest surrender, heaven opens. God's presence ceases to be theory and becomes reality, and everything is transformed. Have you noticed how Jesus, even being God, constantly withdrew to pray? He sought communion with the Father in spirit. It wasn't just a religious practice, it was a vital need. And if the Son of God did this, how much more do we need to? The Spirit needs to be recharged, like a lamp needs oil. And the oil only comes when there's hunger, seeking, dependence. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins. All had lamps, but only 5 had oil. What does this teach us? That it's not enough to seem prepared, you must be filled. Filled with God. Filled with the Spirit. And spiritual filling doesn't happen by chance. It's the result of daily choices, choosing to hear God's voice before the world's, choosing to meditate on the Word instead of feeding the mind with distractions, choosing truth even when it hurts, choosing the narrow path because it leads to life. And this is only possible when our spirit governs our existence, because the world trains us to live by the flesh and the soul, but God calls us to live by the Spirit. As Paul wrote in Galatians 5:25, if we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Spiritual life isn't theory, it's practice, it's a decision, it's a path. So what does God expect from your spirit? He expects you to recognize it as the most sacred place of your existence. He expects you to care for it like a secret garden where heaven's seeds bloom. He expects you to nourish it with truth, with prayer, with worship. He expects you to let the Holy Spirit govern, transform, and direct it. Because when the Spirit is in its rightful place, everything else finds its center. The mind aligns, the emotions stabilize, the body responds, and heaven smiles. This is the truth that has been hidden for centuries, because many sought God only with the eyes of religion, not with the sensitivity of the Spirit. Many got lost in debates, traditions, formalities, but the Spirit continues to seek those who worship in truth. And now, it's your turn. God is calling you, not to a religion, but to a life in the Spirit, a life of depth, of revelation, of true transformation. And if this message has spoken to you, don't ignore this call. Turn to the Lord with all your heart. Surrender completely. Allow Him to awaken your spirit, heal your soul, and use your body as an instrument of glory. Because when you live by the Spirit, you don't just survive, you flourish, you shine. You become what you were created to be, a reflection of God's image. If this content spoke to your heart, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, leave your comment, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. May the peace of the Lord be with you, and until the next video.